What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the news here on TaiwanPlus. The newly appointed Defense Minister, Wellington Koo, has addressed the legislature for the first time since taking up the job. Leslie Lau is following this story for us in Taipei. Leslie, what has the new Defense Minister been saying?
Wellington Koo was joined by top military brass as he gave his first report to Taiwan's legislature as the country's defense minister. Now, before his report to the legislature, Koo told the media the importance of defending Taiwan from China.
台海的和平稳定是全球安全与繁荣不可或缺的要素，我想这个是一个最大的重点。那我们所要的当然还是强化我们的自我防卫的能力。
Immediately in his report, Koo addressed the threat China poses to Taiwan. Beijing says Taiwan is part of China, and that's a claim that President Lai Ching-te rejects. And because he rejects that claim, China sends military ships and planes near Taiwan as a form of intimidation on a near daily basis. Now, Koo outlined 11 things that his ministry is doing to bolster Taiwan's defenses. That includes intelligence gathering, overhauling Taiwan's conscript training, purchasing arms from the U.S., and continuing Taiwan's domestic arms program. Afterwards, he took questions from lawmakers.
So, Leslie, why is this particular report being so closely watched?
Wellington Koo has been on the job for about 3 weeks now. He took up his post immediately after President Lai Ching-te was inaugurated in May. His appointment drew a lot of attention because usually Taiwan's defense minister is someone with a military background like a retired general. But Wellington Koo doesn't have that military background. He's a lawyer by trade, making him a civilian defense minister. Now, he's not the first. He's actually the 7th civilian defense chief Taiwan has had. But he's taking up the job at a time when military tensions between Taiwan and China are high. So he's going to be highly scrutinized.
And we'll be keeping a close eye on what Koo says going forward as well. Thanks, Leslie. That was Leslie Lau updating us on events at the legislature. The U.S. has approved the sale of $300 million in maintenance supplies for Taiwan's advanced F-16 fighter jets. This deal will include spare parts and repair systems for roughly 140 jets, helping to ensure the aircraft are combat ready. The sale is expected to come into effect in about a month. Taiwan has one of the largest fleets of F-16s in the world and often uses these jets to intercept Chinese warplanes that are operating around the country. A delegation of U.S. defense contractors is in Taipei for a forum to bolster bilateral security cooperation. The group is led by retired U.S. Marine officer Stephen Rudder, and it will meet with Taiwanese domestic weapons makers. Sources tell TaiwanPlus that this forum will focus on how to improve the country's drone technology and look for better ways to make sure that Taiwan has the weapons it needs to defend itself. The group will also meet with President Lai Ching-te and other top government officials. Now, Taiwan's been prioritizing drone technology for its defense. But how effective is this strategy? To find out, Jaime Ocon spoke to Eric Gomez, a security analyst from the Cato Institute in Washington, D.C.
This group of U.S. defense contractors that are in Taiwan, meeting with the president and domestic defense companies here in Taiwan, it looks like they're looking to advance Taiwan's drone capabilities. How significant are drones to Taiwan's overall defense capability?
Well, for asymmetric defense, drones are pretty fantastic. Unmanned systems are excellent capabilities for an asymmetric defense strategy, especially for a country like Taiwan that has difficulty with personnel level. And I think Taiwan needs more drones of all ranges, of all types. And I know that the Taiwanese domestic defense industry has been working hard in recent years to try and increase their number of drones. And again, the Ukraine war shows like you expend a lot of these in a conflict. So figuring out what you want to produce and starting to produce in scale now is a really good idea for Taiwan across the board.
Now, aside from advancing Taiwan's drone capabilities, Taiwan is also still waiting on billions of dollars of U.S. weapons that haven't arrived to Taiwan yet. What's the status on those weapons, and why is it taking so long?
The sort of good news, bad news maybe for Taiwan is about 10 billion of this stuff is 2 arms sales. I believe it goes up to about 11 billion for 3 arms sales. the HIMARS, the Abrams tanks, and F-16s. By the end of 2026, assuming there are no new delays, those 3 packages should be delivered in full. And so this backlog problem just on those gets cut by more than half by 2026, assuming there's no new big arms sales announced. So the first issue is trying to find this. The second issue is, well, why does it exist? And I can't give you a simple answer. Unless we have more information, it's really hard to know where the problem is coming from. But I think there are 3 potential candidates. There's the US government, the Taiwanese government, and the US defense industry. The US government might be a problem with delays depending on how long it takes them to get certain things done bureaucratically on their end. Ditto for the Taiwanese.
And in terms of urgency, there's this famous Davidson window of 2027 when China could be able to conduct an attack, but is not saying that it will conduct an attack. In the sense of urgency for Taiwan getting these weapons, how significant is it that it's rushing or improving its own domestic industry?
Well, a lot of it depends on, the assessment of that window. And for what it's worth, I don't buy the Davidson window. I don't think that Xi Jinping has a date in mind. I don't think the PLA has a date in mind. Yes, they have been practicing these sort of operations around Taiwan, but they're in the midst. They're about 10 years into a big, defense reform effort. So I think the good news for Taiwan is that there is time, right?
That was Eric Gomez, a security analyst from the Cato Institute, speaking with our reporter Jaime Ocon. U.S. business leaders are urging Taiwan to adopt international standards to make it easier for foreign firms to do business here. In its annual white paper, the American Chamber of Commerce called for more transparency in Taiwan's regulatory practices. Now, that includes providing drafts for new rules in both Chinese and English. The Chamber's chair, Dan Silver, says Taiwan is in a period of change with a chance to thrive as a global partner. The Chamber is also urging the U.S. government to continue support for Taiwan in defense and trade, despite not having official ties. Silver also expressed some hope for a bilateral free trade agreement.
With the 21st Century Initiative on its way to completion, with the strong bipartisan support for Taiwan in Congress, there is a prospect that a bilateral trade agreement could be in the offing sometime in the future.
Palau's president says he expects China to interfere in the country's upcoming elections over its recognition of Taiwan.
Well, I think in every election, the Chinese are always involved. One of the things that we know is that it's the president who ultimately decides who you have diplomatic relations with. And so obviously they know where my stance is. So I guess I would be the enemy, right? and so you would probably want to remove me and put somebody else in that would be more friendly.
Palau has blamed China for a recent cyber attack in which thousands of confidential documents were stolen. According to the New York Times, many of those contain details of Palau's relationship with Taiwan. Palau is one of only 12 countries with official diplomatic ties with Taipei. China has denied it was behind the hack. The world has got a scorching reality check from the European Union's climate service, with this May declared the hottest one ever. There have now been 12 straight months of smashed temperature records. Sandy Chi reports.
As scorching heat waves and long droughts plague the globe, it's now been confirmed. Last month was the hottest May on record, completing a string of 12 record-breaking months. According to EU Climate Service Copernicus, the Earth's average surface temperature reached 15.9 degrees Celsius last month, 1.52 degrees higher than the May average before industrial times. The stock findings prompted UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres to call for urgent action.
We cannot accept a future where the rich are protected in air-conditioned bubbles while the rest of humanity is lashed by lethal weather in unlivable lands. We must safeguard people and economies.
Guterres called for slashed emissions, clamping down on fossil fuel industry and the boosting of climate finance over the next 18 months. to reverse the impacts of global warming. It comes after a year of deadly disasters that have claimed thousands of lives. Brutal heat waves in Asia shriveled crops, forced schools to close, and made everyday life a misery for millions of others. Africa experienced long-lasting droughts, while communities across the world were devastated by floods. Scientists say these events were worsened by global warming, which is exacerbated by the burning of fossil fuels. Most governments have pledged to gradually reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but few are doing at the speed scientists say is needed to avert the devastation. And the future is not looking bright. A separate report from the UN's World Meteorological Organization, or WMO, is predicting an 80% chance the next 5 years will see the average global temperature surpass 1.5-degree target, laid out in the landmark 2015 Paris Agreement.
Is the stark reality that we risk trillions of dollars in economic losses, millions of lives upended, and destruction of fragile and precious ecosystems and the biodiversity that exists there. What is clear is that the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees C is hanging on a thread. It's not yet dead, but it's hanging by a thread.
The WMO also says it's highly likely one of the next 5 years will be 2023 as the world's hottest year on record. UN leaders are renewing calls to advance economies meetings at a G20 summit in Brazil next month to take the lead in minimizing the impact of climate change. And while the tally of record-breaking temperatures will eventually end, the overall trend of dangerous heat and climate disasters may not, unless the world leaders heed the call for change. Devon Tai, Rosie Greninger, and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is fighting a tough battle with an evolving enemy, a type of honeybee parasite called the varroa mite. It's killed more bees than ever before, and it's growing in number. Irene Lin looks at what the country's bee farmers are up against.
This unusually frail honeybee with deformed wings is close to its demise. It's among the up to half of Taiwan's bee population that has been killed by waves of parasitic attacks in recent years.
这个就是从它幼虫里面卡出来的，有没有？啊，这些都已经被它侵犯到了，有没有？它的头是看起来黑黑湿湿的。
These uninvited guests are called varroa mites. They latch onto adult honeybees to sneak into beehives and feed on the other adults and larvae inside. The mites also often carry pathogens on them, making bees ill not just from malnourishment, but also from viral diseases.
其实病毒它会造成它这只蜜蜂，等它羽化的时候，你就看到翅膀会变成畸形。那一旦蜜蜂翅膀畸形，那它就没有工作能力，它也没办法飞，只能在巢里面吃食物，没办法出去工作，其实寿命很短，其实出来没几天就死掉了。
Bee farmers say the mites keep coming back, and that they've run out of ways to ward them off.
负离子水也出来，草酸糖也是很多啦。 就是大家一直在找方法，这2年要不太下去，很严重。200多箱，咬到剩下全灭的也都有啊。
Bee researcher Wu Mingchen says the mites may have developed a defense against oxalic acid over time, and there are other factors that are making it harder for them to revitalize the bee population.
气候变迁造成的食物，蜜蜂的食物可能有短缺，然后另外外在环境可能农作物会开始喷药。 防治害虫，那这些农药也会危害到我们的蜂。
Right now, there is no one surefire solution to the infestation problem. And as scientists keep working on ways to keep Taiwan's bees alive, it's farmers on the front line that will have to weather this growing crisis. Leon Lian and Irene Lin for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for joining us here on What's Up Taiwan. Grab our app or follow us on social media to get more reports sent to your device. Finally, check out these UK breakdancers preparing for the Summer Games in Paris. I'm Eric Gao. Take care, and we'll see you later.